What happens when a woman, wrongfully accused, walks into a courtroom expecting judgment, but ends up turning the tables on everyone? When the truth is revealed, and the ones in power find themselves on trial instead. A case that seemed simple becomes a national scandal. Corruption is exposed. Justice is redefined. And one woman reminds the world that power doesn't come from status, it comes from the truth. If you love stories of justice, power, and shocking plot twists, hit that like button, comment your country, and subscribe for more. The marble floors of the federal courthouse gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Rows of polished benches lined the courtroom, packed with journalists, lawyers, and officials. At the center of it all, a woman stood in handcuffs. She was black, dressed in a plain navy jumpsuit, her posture straight, her expression unreadable. The air buzzed with murmurs as people whispered about her. She looks too calm. What kind of criminal acts like that? She must know she's guilty. At the judge's bench, Judge Robert Whitmore leaned forward, studying her with thinly veiled contempt. "Bring the defendant forward," he said. The bailiff grabbed her by the arm, leading her to the defense table. Across the room, Prosecutor Daniel Vaughn stood tall, his eyes gleaming with confidence. "Your Honor," Vaughn said, holding up a thick stack of papers, "we have overwhelming evidence proving the defendant's guilt. There is no need for delays." Judge Whitmore smirked. "Of course. Let's get this over with quickly." The woman remained silent. She didn't flinch. She didn't plead. She just smiled. And that's when everything changed. The moment she smiled, the room shifted. The energy changed. It was subtle, a flicker of hesitation, a murmur among the spectators, a nervous glance exchanged between the prosecutor and the judge. Because no one accused of a crime this serious should be smiling. Yet, there she was, handcuffed, staring straight at them, unshaken. Judge Robert Whitmore cleared his throat, attempting to regain control of the room. "Miss Carter," he said, his voice laced with disdain, "this is not a place for theatrics." The woman, Maya Carter, finally spoke. "You're right, Your Honor." Her voice was smooth, deliberate, controlled. And yet, that's exactly what this is, isn't it? The judge's jaw tightened. The prosecutor, Daniel Vaughn, scoffed. "Nice try," Vaughn sneered. "But charm won't save you. Not when we have hard evidence." He turned to the jury, his confidence returning. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "I present to you undeniable proof of the defendant's crimes." He grabbed a remote control, pointed it at the courtroom's large screen, and the screen flickered. The video started. And for a moment, everything seemed normal. A grainy surveillance clip appeared, showing a figure receiving a briefcase of money in a dimly lit parking lot. The jury leaned forward. "There she is," Vaughn announced, pointing at the screen. "Maya Carter, caught in the act." The judge nodded, satisfied. "That looks pretty clear to me." But then, the video glitched. Static hissed across the speakers. A second later, new footage replaced the old. The screen now displayed bank transactions, wire transfers, offshore accounts, and the name attached to them, Judge Robert Whitmore. The courtroom fell into stunned silence. Vaughn froze. The judge's smug expression vanished. "Turn that off," he barked. But before anyone could react, a new voice echoed through the speakers. A distorted, digitized voice, but clear enough for everyone to hear. "Judge Whitmore, you have accepted over $5 million in bribes to manipulate court rulings." The gasps spread like wildfire. The judge's face turned ghost white. "This is illegal," he thundered, pounding his gavel. "Cut the feed." A court technician scrambled to shut off the system, but it was already too late. Because the news cameras in the back of the room had caught everything, and the world was watching live. Vaughn was visibly sweating now. He turned to the judge, desperate. "This is an attack on the judicial system," he shouted. "Your Honor, this woman is exposing the truth," Maya interrupted smoothly. She lifted her handcuffed wrists and placed them gently on the table. "This is what you do, isn't it? Manufacture evidence. Silence the innocent. Protect yourselves." The spectators began whispering, some nodding in agreement. Maya's eyes locked onto Whitmore's. "Tell me, Your Honor," she said, her voice calm but sharp, "do you still think people like me can't be innocent?" The judge's mouth opened, then shut, because for the first time in his life, he had no words. The room was no longer his. It belonged to her. Before the judge could react, the doors to the courtroom burst open, and in walked FBI agents, dressed in black tactical gear, their badges flashing under the lights. The lead agent stepped forward, pulling a document from his coat. "Judge Robert Whitmore," he announced, "you are under arrest for conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and bribery." The courtroom exploded into chaos. Whitmore staggered back, his hands trembling. "No, and no," he roared. "This is a setup." But the agents moved in. The judge thrashed, struggling against them, but it was futile. One of the agents shoved a set of handcuffs onto his wrists. And in that moment, Maya Carter was no longer the only one in chains. As the FBI dragged the disgraced judge from the bench, Maya calmly stood up. Vaughn, the prosecutor, took a step back, his face pale. This can't be happening," he muttered. A court clerk, in a panic, turned to flee. But an FBI agent caught him by the collar. The walls were collapsing. The corruption was exposed. And as Maya stood there, watching the system fall apart before her eyes, a camera zoomed in. The reporters had gathered outside, broadcasting this moment to millions. And that's when Maya did something no one expected. She reached into her pocket, pulled out a badge, held it up for everyone to see. The golden letters gleamed. United States Secret Service. A collective gasp rippled through the room. The prosecutor's knees nearly buckled. One of the jurors clutched their chest. Because the woman they had accused was not just an innocent civilian. She was one of the most powerful federal agents in the country. And she had just taken them all down. Maya Carter lowered the badge, turning to face the cameras. Her expression was calm, confident, unshaken. "You want to know who I am?" she said. She raised her chin. "I am justice." The flashbulbs exploded, and the world would never forget this day. The courtroom was in chaos. Judge Robert Whitmore, once untouchable, had been dragged away in handcuffs. The man who had mocked Maya Carter, who had believed himself above the law, had just become another criminal in the system he thought he controlled. And yet, the battle wasn't over. Because one man still stood, his face pale, his confidence shattered. Prosecutor Daniel Vaughn, the last piece of the puzzle. And now, it was his turn to fall. Vaughn took a shaky breath, gripping the edges of his desk as if it could keep him from collapsing. The entire room was watching him now. The jury, the press, the spectators. He was supposed to be the man in control. But now, he was cornered. This is an attack on the judicial system. Vaughn finally managed to say, his voice cracking. "You can't trust this woman. She's been deceiving the court." Maya raised an eyebrow, her face unreadable. "Deceiving?" she repeated. "That's rich, coming from you." Vaughn swallowed hard. She manipulated this trial. She planted false evidence. Marcus Boyd, the FBI's lead forensic analyst, stepped forward, holding up a certified document. "Actually," Marcus said, his voice casually amused, "the files came directly from the FBI's corruption task force. Fully authenticated." He turned to Maya. "Want me to keep going? I've got a lot more." Maya tilted her head. "Go ahead," she said. Vaughn visibly tensed. "No need," he snapped. "This is all circumstantial. You have no direct proof against me." Maya smiled, because that's exactly what she had been waiting for. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small USB drive. "Funny thing about that," she murmured, holding it up. The courtroom hushed. Then, she walked over to the court's media system, inserted the USB, and pressed play. The screen behind her flickered to life. And what played next? Destroyed Daniel Vaughn's life. The video showed a luxury hotel room, a meeting recorded in secret. Seated at a mahogany table was Vaughn himself, his features unmistakable. Across from him, a group of businessmen. "This case needs to be handled." Vaughn's voice came through the speakers, clear as day. "We can't afford to let her walk free. She knows too much." The businessmen exchanged glances. "How much do you need?" one of them asked. Vaughn leaned forward, a greedy smirk on his face. $2 million, he said. "And in exchange?" Vaughn chuckled. "I bury her." The video ended. The courtroom was dead silent. Then, chaos erupted. Vaughn staggered back, his face ashen. This is fake," he stammered. "This has been tampered with." Maya didn't move. "We have the original files," she said. Marcus smirked, holding up a second USB drive. "And backups." Vaughn spun toward the judge's bench, but there was no Whitmore to save him now. His breathing became erratic. He looked toward the jury, but their expressions were pure disgust. He turned to the bailiffs. but they were already moving toward him. No, Vaughn shouted. I was following orders. Maya's eyes darkened. Whose orders? She asked. Vaughn froze. For a split second, she saw something flicker in his expression. A hint of fear. A reminder that Whitmore wasn't the highest link in the chain. There was someone else. But Vaughn didn't answer. Instead, he ran. He bolted toward the exit, shoving aside reporters and spectators. A few guards tried to block his path, but Vaughn was desperate, moving like a trapped animal. He burst through the doors, racing down the marble-floored hallway. But Maya was right behind him, and she was faster. She reached him just before he could hit the stairwell, grabbed his arm, and slammed him against the wall. He struggled, but she was stronger. And when she spoke, her voice was ice cold. Who gave you the order? Vaughn clenched his jaw. You don't know what you're doing, he spat. Maya leaned in. Neither do you. Then, FBI agents stormed the hallway. One of them cuffed Vaughn, shoving him forward. And just like that, he was done. As Vaughn was dragged away, Marcus jogged up, breathing heavily. Damn, he muttered. Didn't know you had track star speed. Maya wasn't smiling. Because something was wrong. Vaughn had been terrified, but not just because he was caught. He had been afraid of whoever was above him. She turned to Marcus. We need to dig deeper. Marcus nodded, but his face suddenly darkened. He held up his phone. About that. Maya took the phone. Her stomach dropped. A new message. No number. No sender. Just 3 words. This is bigger. Maya's grip tightened. Vanessa King, who had just caught up, peered over her shoulder. Well, that's ominous. Maya exhaled. No, she murmured. That's a threat. She looked up, scanning the crowd, searching for anything out of place. Because if someone above Vaughn was watching, then they had just become the next targets. The message on Maya's phone burned in her mind. This is bigger. No sender. No number. Just a warning. Whoever had sent it wasn't just watching, they were in control. And that meant taking down Whitmore and Vaughn wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The silent exit. The courtroom had emptied, but outside, the steps of the federal courthouse were a war zone. Cameras flashed wildly as reporters shouted over each other, desperate to get a statement. Agent Carter, is it true that the court system has been compromised? Who else is involved in this conspiracy? What does the government have to say about this corruption scandal? Maya didn't stop, didn't speak, because right now, she didn't have answers. Just more questions. Vanessa King and Marcus Boyd flanked her, guiding her toward the black SUV waiting at the curb. Drive, Maya ordered as soon as the doors slammed shut. The vehicle pulled into traffic, and the chaos of the courthouse faded behind them. But inside the car, the tension was just beginning. A name that shouldn't exist. Marcus was already typing furiously on his laptop, his brow furrowed. I traced the message, he muttered. Maya leaned in, and Marcus hesitated. Then, he turned the screen toward her. Maya's stomach dropped. Because the signal had bounced off 3 different encrypted servers, but the origin point led to the Department of Justice. Someone inside the DOJ sent this? Vanessa muttered. Marcus shook his head. Not just anyone. He tapped a file open on the screen. A name appeared. Maya read it, then felt her pulse spike. David Langston. Vanessa frowned. Who the hell is David Langston? Maya's jaw clenched. He's dead. Marcus looked up sharply. What? Maya exhaled. David Langston was a senior investigator for the DOJ's Internal Affairs Division. She paused. 2 years ago, he was killed in a car accident. Vanessa sat back, crossing her arms. So either someone's using his identity. Marcus finished the thought. Or he's not as dead as everyone thinks. Maya's mind raced. Whoever sent that message knew something. And if they were using Langston's credentials, it meant they were on the inside. And that meant they were in danger. The bait is set. Maya's fingers hovered over her phone screen. Then, she typed a message. Who are you? Seconds passed. Then, a response. Meet me. Tonight. Alone. Maya's eyes darkened. Marcus cursed. Oh, that's not suspicious at all. Vanessa scoffed. Yeah, sounds like a totally great idea. Let's walk into a trap. Maya read the next line. If you don't, you'll never know who's really pulling the strings. That was enough. She made her decision. I'm going. Marcus threw his hands in the air. Are you serious? Vanessa frowned. You trust this? Maya's expression was cold. No. She slid her gun into its holster. That's why you're coming too. Vanessa smirked. Now that's the answer I like to hear. The meeting that changed everything. The meeting spot was an abandoned train yard on the outskirts of D.C. The moment they arrived, Maya sensed something was off. No cars, no movement, no sign of an ambush. But still, something felt wrong. She stepped out of the SUV, her pulse steady, scanning the darkened lot. "Langston," she called out. Silence. Then, a shadow moved near one of the rusted train cars. Maya's fingers brushed her holster. A man stepped forward, his hands raised in surrender. He wore a hooded jacket, his face partially hidden. But when he spoke, Maya knew. It was David Langston, and he was very much alive. Langston pulled back his hood, revealing tired eyes and a face lined with scars. "You weren't supposed to find me," he said. Maya stared at him. "You're dead." Langston let out a hollow laugh. "That's what they wanted you to think." Vanessa stepped beside Maya, gun at her side. "Who's they?" Langston exhaled, glancing around nervously. "You don't get it. Whitmore, Vaughn, they were nothing." Maya's stomach twisted. "Who's above them?" Langston hesitated. Then, he whispered two words. Words that made Maya's heart stop. "Jonathan Drake." Marcus swore. Vanessa's hand clenched around her gun. "Drake's in prison," Maya said. Langston shook his head. "No." He looked her dead in the eyes. "Drake's still running the show." From the inside, Maya's blood turned to ice. If that was true, then nothing was over. Not even close. Langston reached into his pocket, handing Maya a small flash drive. "This is everything," he said. "Every name, every payment, every order." Maya took it, her grip tightening. "If you expose this, you burn them all," Langston whispered. Maya nodded. "Good." Then, gunfire erupted. The ambush. Bullets whizzed past as Maya and Vanessa dove for cover. Langston collapsed, clutching his side, blood spreading through his jacket. Maya pulled him behind the train car. "Hold on," she ordered. His breath hitched. "Too late," he coughed. His hand trembled as he grabbed Maya's wrist. "Finish it." Then, he went still. Maya's stomach twisted. There was no time to grieve. More bullets tore through the air. Vanessa fired back. Marcus shouted over the radio. "We need an exit, now." Maya's eyes darkened. Langston was gone. But his information wasn't. And now? She knew exactly who was next. Jonathan Drake. From his prison cell, he was still pulling the strings. And it was time to cut them. The gunfire had stopped. The bodies had been cleared. But the weight of David Langston's final words still pressed down on Maya Carter like a vice. Jonathan Drake is still running the show. From the inside. Drake, the man she had put behind bars. The man whose empire she had burned to the ground. Somehow he wasn't finished. And that meant, neither was she. The last name on the list. The black SUV sped down the highway, weaving through traffic as Marcus Boyd typed furiously on his laptop. "Tell me you got something," Vanessa King muttered from the driver's seat, gripping the wheel tightly. Marcus didn't look up. Langston wasn't lying, he said. "I just accessed internal bureau files." He turned the screen toward them. Maya's eyes narrowed. Jonathan Drake, Maximum Security Detention Unit, Fort Rivers Prison. Vanessa scoffed. "So what? He's locked up. How the hell is he still running anything?" Marcus kept scrolling. "Because he's not in just any prison," he said. Fort Rivers is a private facility, funded by offshore accounts linked to Drake's old network. Maya's stomach twisted. So they didn't arrest him. She exhaled sharply. They relocated him. Vanessa let out a slow whistle. "So what's the plan?" she asked. "Break in and ask nicely?" Maya's jaw tightened. "No." She turned her gaze back to the screen. "I'm going to walk right through the front door." Fort Rivers Prison. The facility sat on a desolate stretch of land, surrounded by barbed wire fences and guard towers. Inside, it was clean, quiet, controlled. A prison for men too powerful to be placed in normal cells. Maya, dressed in a simple black suit, flashed her FBI badge at the front desk. "Agent Carter," she said, her voice steady. "I have authorization to speak with inmate 001. The guard at the desk, a bored-looking man in his 40s, barely glanced at the credentials before buzzing her through. Because as far as the system was concerned, Jonathan Drake wasn't a prisoner. He was still a king. Inside the private holding wing, a single steel door stood at the end of the corridor. A guard swiped a keycard, then stepped aside. "You have 10 minutes, he muttered. The door unlocked. Maya stepped inside. And there he was. Jonathan Drake, dressed in a prison jumpsuit. his silver hair neatly combed back, his calm smile untouched by the reality of his surroundings. "Agent Carter," he greeted smoothly. "I was wondering when you'd visit." Maya didn't sit, didn't blink. "You killed David Langston." Drake chuckled. "Oh, Maya." He shook his head. "Still blaming me for everything?" Her fists clenched. "Don't play games with me. Langston had evidence. Evidence that could destroy whatever network you're still running." Drake tilted his head. "And yet, you still don't see it, do you?" Maya's breath slowed. "See what?" Drake leaned forward. His smile widened. "That I'm not the problem." Maya's pulse quickened. "You're saying there's someone above you?" Drake let out a low, amused laugh. "Oh, Agent Carter." He spread his hands. "Do you really think I was the top of the pyramid?" Maya stared at him. Because for the first time, she wasn't sure if he was lying. "If not you," she said slowly, "then who?" Drake's smile faded. For the first time, he looked serious. And then, he said a name. A name Maya had never heard before, but one that made her blood run cold. Elias Mercer. The room went silent. Maya memorized the name instantly. "Who is he?" she demanded. Drake exhaled. "The architect." Maya frowned. "The architect of what?" Drake leaned back. "Of everything." The guard's voice crackled over the intercom. "Time's up, Agent Carter." Maya stepped forward, lowering her voice. "If Mercer is so powerful, why are you giving him up?" Drake's smile returned. "Because, Maya," he whispered, "I'd rather see you go after him than me." The door buzzed open. Maya turned to leave, but Drake's final words stopped her cold. "Careful, Agent Carter," he murmured. "You're walking into something bigger than you can imagine." Maya didn't look back. She didn't need to, because she already knew. This wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about power. And Elias Mercer? He was the one who had it. Back in the SUV, Vanessa and Marcus immediately noticed Maya's expression. "That bad?" Vanessa asked. Maya sat down, exhaling. "Worse." She handed Marcus a slip of paper with a single name on it. His eyebrows furrowed. "Who the hell is Elias Mercer?" Maya stared out the window. "That's what we're about to find out." Across the country, in a high-rise office overlooking Manhattan, a man in a tailored suit poured himself a glass of scotch. He watched the news feed of Drake's arrest, watched Maya Carter's name spread across every media outlet. Then, he smiled, because Jonathan Drake had just given her his name. And now, Elias Mercer knew exactly who to eliminate next. The name Elias Mercer echoed in Maya Carter's mind like a warning shot. A name she had never heard before. A man she had never seen. Yet, somehow, he had been pulling the strings all along. She didn't know what he controlled, didn't know where he was. But she did know one thing. He knew her now. And that meant she was already in his sights. Marcus Boyd's fingers flew across the keyboard as they drove through the night. "I've run Mercer's name through every federal database. And guess what?" Maya and Vanessa King exchanged a glance. "Nothing," Maya guessed. Marcus scoffed. "Worse than nothing. It's like he doesn't exist." Vanessa frowned. "No birth records? No business filings? Nothing." Marcus shook his head. "He's a ghost. No social security number, no official government ties, no digital footprint. It's like he's erased himself from the system." Maya's jaw tightened. "Which means someone did it for him." Marcus tapped another key, pulling up a grainy photo from an old intelligence file. It was the only known image of Mercer, taken nearly 15 years ago. A man in a dark suit, his features hidden in shadows. "That's it," Vanessa muttered. "That's all we have." Marcus hesitated. "There's one more thing." He clicked a file. A list of offshore accounts flooded the screen. "Mercer moves money through shell corporations," Marcus explained. "The kind used by arms dealers, intelligence operatives, and corrupt officials." He zoomed in on one transaction. A $20 million transfer, deposited into a private account just 2 weeks ago. Maya's stomach twisted. The source of the money? Fort Rivers Prison. Vanessa cursed. "That's the same facility housing Jonathan Drake." Marcus nodded grimly. "Which means Mercer isn't just powerful." He turned to Maya. "He owns the people you thought you already took down." Maya's fingers tightened into fists. "Then we find him." The SUV rolled to a stop outside a quiet suburban home in Maryland. Marcus turned in his seat. This guy used to work for Mercer's financial network. Former banker turned whistleblower. Maya studied the small, unassuming house. "And he's still alive?" "Barely," Marcus muttered. "He's been in hiding for years." Vanessa cocked her gun. "Let's hope he still wants to talk." Maya nodded and stepped out. The house was dark, too quiet. Something felt off. She knocked on the door. No answer. Vanessa exchanged a look with her, then tried the doorknob. Unlocked. Maya's heart pounded. She pushed the door open and froze. The house was empty. No furniture. No personal belongings. Just one thing sitting in the center of the room. A single envelope on the floor. Maya's pulse spiked. She bent down, picking it up. Inside was a photograph. And when she turned it over, her breath caught in her throat. Because the photo was of her. Taken just hours ago, outside Fort Rivers prison. Vanessa inhaled sharply. He knows we're coming. Marcus swore under his breath. This isn't a lead. Maya nodded grimly. It's a trap. Maya pocketed the envelope, turning toward the door. We need to. The windows exploded. Glass shattered as gunfire tore through the house. Down! Vanessa shouted, pulling Maya to the floor. Marcus hit the ground, his laptop crashing beside him. Bullets ripped through the walls, tearing chunks of wood and plaster apart. The assault lasted 10 seconds. Then, silence. Maya's ears rang. Vanessa crawled toward the window, peeking outside. Then, she cursed. They're gone. Maya exhaled sharply, pulling herself up. This wasn't just a warning shot. This was a message. And it was clear. Turn back. Or die. As they drove away, Marcus wiped blood from a small cut on his forehead. So what now? He asked, his voice shaky but determined. Maya's phone buzzed. An unknown number. She answered. A man's voice, smooth, controlled, dripping with amusement. Agent Carter, he said. You're persistent. I respect that. Maya's grip tightened. Elias Mercer. A low chuckle. Very good. Maya's pulse pounded. You kill everyone who looks for you. Only the ones who get too close. His voice was calm, too calm. You should take the warning, Agent Carter. Walk away. You can't win this one. Maya exhaled. That's funny. She leaned back, smirking. Because I was just about to say the same thing to you. A pause. Then Mercer's voice dropped to a whisper. Be careful what you wish for, Agent Carter. The call disconnected. Maya stared at her phone. Because now, it was war. Vanessa kept her eyes on the road, tense and alert. What do we do? Maya didn't hesitate. We stopped waiting for leads. She turned to Marcus. Pull everything on Mercer. Every connection, every shell company, every person tied to him. Marcus nodded. And then, Maya's eyes burned with fire. Then we make him run for once. The chase had begun. And this time, Maya Carter wasn't playing defense. She was coming for Elias Mercer. The black SUV cut through the empty streets of Washington, D.C., its headlights slicing through the darkness. Inside, Maya Carter sat stone-faced, her mind racing. Elias Mercer had made his move. Now, it was her turn. All right, let's talk about Mercer, Marcus Boyd said from the back seat, typing furiously on his laptop. Lines of code and encrypted files flashed across his screen. I've been digging through international banking records, old CIA reports, and some really shady government contracts, he continued. Maya stared ahead, listening. And? She asked. Marcus exhaled sharply. Mercer isn't just some high-level criminal mastermind. He turned the laptop toward them. On the screen was a classified intelligence document, stamped with an official Department of Defense insignia. He was part of something called Project Revenant. Vanessa King glanced over from the driver's seat. Never heard of it. Marcus smirked. That's because it doesn't officially exist. He scrolled further. Project Revenant was a black ops program designed to create strategic architects, people who could manipulate global economies, government policies, and military operations from behind the scenes. Maya's stomach twisted. You're saying Mercer was trained to control entire nations? Marcus nodded. And then he disappeared. Vanessa frowned. Let me guess. The government lost control of him. Marcus shrugged. Or they never tried to stop him in the first place. Maya's fingers tapped against her thigh. Elias Mercer wasn't just a powerful man. He was a ghost built by the system itself. And now, he was untouchable. Unless Maya found a way to change that. I found something else, Marcus continued. He pulled up a satellite image, zooming in on a secluded island off the East Coast. This is one of Mercer's private estates, he explained. It's not listed under his name, but it's linked to shell corporations connected to his offshore accounts. Maya studied the image. A fortified mansion, surrounded by dense forests and private security checkpoints. A fortress. We need to get inside, she said. Vanessa scoffed. Yeah, sure. Just knock on the front door and ask politely? Maya smirked. Something like that. They pulled into a warehouse near the docks, their temporary base of operations. Inside, Maya unrolled a detailed blueprint of Mercer's estate. Security is tight, she said, studying the layout. Armed guards on rotating patrols, motion sensors on all entry points, and thermal cameras covering every exit. Vanessa whistled. Man really doesn't like visitors. Maya glanced at Marcus. Can you disable the security feeds? Marcus cracked his knuckles. Give me 10 minutes. Maya nodded. Good. Vanessa and I will go in first. Marcus, you run Overwatch from here. Vanessa smirked. Breaking into a billionaire's compound in the dead of night? Now you're speaking my language. Maya checked her weapon, securing it under her jacket. We're not just breaking in. She looked up, her eyes burning with determination. We're sending a message. 2 hours later, the waves crashed against the rocky cliffs of Mercer's Island estate. Maya and Vanessa moved silently through the darkness, their black wetsuits blending into the night. Marcus's voice crackled in their earpieces. Cameras are looping. You have a 10-minute window. Maya nodded, emerging from the water and scaling the rock face toward the compound. Vanessa followed, her movements swift and precise. They reached the perimeter fence, staying low as a guard passed by. Wait, Maya whispered. They froze, bodies pressed against the shadows. The guard hesitated, then moved on. Maya exhaled. Go. They slipped through, moving toward the main house. Inside, Mercer was waiting. The estate's interior was cold, modern, and empty. Maya and Vanessa moved silently through the halls, reaching what Marcus had identified as Mercer's private office. Maya tried the door. Locked. She pulled out a small charge, setting it near the handle. On 3, she whispered. 1, 2, 3. The door exploded inward, and inside, sitting calmly behind a polished oak desk, sipping a glass of whiskey, was Elias Mercer. His suit was immaculate, his expression completely unreadable. And when he saw them, he smiled. Agent Carter, he greeted. I was wondering when you'd show up. Maya didn't lower her gun. Vanessa moved to the side, cutting off any escape. But Mercer? He didn't flinch, didn't panic, didn't even seem remotely surprised. You've been causing quite the mess, he mused, swirling his drink. Drake's downfall, Vaughn's arrest, Whitmore's exposure. He sighed. And now you think I'm next. Maya took a step forward. You are. Mercer chuckled. Oh, Agent Carter. You really don't understand, do you? He set his glass down, folding his hands. You don't arrest people like me. Maya's finger hovered over the trigger. What makes you so sure? Mercer's smile widened. Because I own everything. Then his phone buzzed. Maya's eyes flicked toward the screen. The caller ID? White House. Her blood ran cold. Mercer tilted his head. Would you like to answer it? Maya's stomach twisted. Because suddenly she realized. She might have underestimated Elias Mercer. And this wasn't just a war. It was a game. One she had just stepped into. And Mercer had already been playing for years. The phone buzzed again. On the screen, the caller ID glowed in the dim office. White House. Elias Mercer leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. Maya Carter kept her gun trained on him, but her stomach twisted. This was bigger than she thought. And Mercer? He knew it. The phone stopped ringing. A moment of silence. Then, a single text appeared on the screen. Handled. Mercer smirked. It's always amusing, he said, watching people realize how little control they actually have. Maya's finger tightened on the trigger. Who was that? She demanded. Mercer shrugged. Does it matter? Vanessa King stepped forward, her own gun raised. It does if we're about to put a bullet in you. Mercer chuckled. You think that will change anything? He leaned forward, folding his hands. Let's say you kill me, Agent Carter. What do you think happens next? Maya stayed silent. You think my operations stop? Mercer continued. You think the system I built crumbles? Please. You've seen what happens when you cut off one head. He tilted his head, watching her closely. Another one grows in its place. Maya exhaled slowly. She knew Mercer wasn't bluffing. She had spent years taking down corrupt officials, only for new ones to replace them. This wasn't just about one man. It was about the system itself. Then I'll just keep cutting, she said coldly. Mercer's smile widened. That's the difference between you and me, Agent Carter. He lifted his glass, swirling the amber liquid. I don't play defense. I build the game itself. He took a slow sip. And you? You're just another piece on the board. Maya's blood burned. Mercer wasn't just a criminal. He was a kingmaker. And she had just walked into his kingdom. Maya kept her gun steady. Where's the proof? She asked. Mercer raised an eyebrow. Proof of what? That you're controlling the government from the shadows. Mercer smirked. I don't need proof. He gestured around. The fact that you're standing here, in my office, with a gun to my head, and yet, my phone still rings from the White House. That should tell you everything. Maya's chest tightened. He was right. If Mercer could be so confident, so calm, even with her standing there ready to kill him, that meant he wasn't afraid. Because he knew nothing could touch him. Or so he thought. Maya glanced at Vanessa. A subtle signal. Vanessa nodded. And then, Marcus Boyd's voice crackled in their earpieces. We're in. Mercer's smirk disappeared. Maya's heart pounded. What did you do? Mercer asked, his voice losing its amusement. Maya smiled. You're not the only one who plays offense. Back at their safe house, Marcus's fingers flew across his keyboard. We just uploaded every file from Mercer's private servers, he said. Emails, bank transactions, blackmail documents, everything. Maya's eyes never left Mercer. You built this game, she said. Let's see what happens when the world sees the rulebook. Mercer's jaw tightened. For the first time, he looked rattled. You have no idea what you've done, he said quietly. Vanessa grinned. We really do love hearing that. The phone buzzed again. Mercer looked down. More messages. This is bad. Damage control now. Fix this. He reached for the phone. Maya grabbed it first. Mercer's face darkened. Give that back, Agent Carter. Maya tilted her head. Or what? Silence. Because for the first time tonight, Mercer had nothing to say. Across the country, screens flickered to life. Breaking news alerts. Reports of a shadow network controlling judges, politicians, military contracts. Names tied to corruption scandals, illegal funding, rigged elections. And at the center of it all, Elias Mercer. His empire was burning, and the whole world was watching. Mercer let out a slow breath. Then he laughed. A low, bitter sound. Impressive, he admitted. But tell me, Agent Carter. His gaze hardened. Do you really think this ends with me? Maya's stomach twisted. Mercer smiled again. You've made a lot of enemies tonight. He leaned back. I hope you're ready. And Maya? She knew he was right. This wasn't just a takedown. This was a declaration of war. And the people who ran the world from the shadows, they wouldn't just sit back and watch. They would come for her. And she would be ready. Outside the estate, as the first FBI sirens wailed in the distance, Vanessa looked at Maya. We really just did that, huh? Maya exhaled. Yeah, we did. Marcus's voice cut in. Heads up, guys. I just intercepted something. Maya frowned. Intercepted what? Marcus hesitated. Then, a single message appeared on Maya's phone. An anonymous sender. And 3 chilling words. We are watching. Maya stared at the screen. Because she knew. This wasn't over. Not even close. The message stared back at Maya Carter from her phone screen. We are watching. No number. No traceable origin. Just a warning. Vanessa King leaned over, reading the words. Well, that's creepy as hell. Marcus Boyd, still at his laptop, cursed under his breath. I tried to track the source. No luck. Maya's jaw clenched. Then we find them the hard way. Because whoever sent that message, they weren't just watching. They were already making their next move. They didn't have to wait long. Within an hour of the leak, Mercer's estate was swarmed by federal agents. News helicopters circled like vultures, reporters desperate to capture footage of the fall of a kingmaker. Maya stood on the perimeter, watching as Mercer was hauled out of his home in handcuffs, his once untouchable empire collapsing in real time. His eyes met hers through the chaos. And he smiled. A small, knowing smile. Like he was already 3 moves ahead. Maya's stomach tightened. Because something was wrong. Then, Marcus swore. Guys, we have a problem. Maya and Vanessa turned to him. What now? Vanessa asked. Marcus's face was pale, his fingers shaking over the keyboard. The files we leaked? Someone's already scrubbing them. Maya's blood ran cold. Who? Marcus pointed at the screen. A government IP address. The Department of Defense. Someone inside the U.S. government was already burying Mercer's secrets. And that meant the people behind Mercer were still in power, still watching, and still pulling the strings. Maya's head spun. This wasn't supposed to happen. Exposing Mercer was supposed to cripple the network. Instead, it had activated something bigger. And then, her phone buzzed. A new message. You don't know what you've done. Maya exhaled slowly. Then, another text. You're in over your head, Agent Carter. Vanessa scowled. Oh, I hate when they try to be cryptic. Maya's eyes narrowed. I don't. Because that meant they were afraid. And that meant she was on the right path. Back at their safe house, Marcus worked relentlessly, trying to salvage what he could before the government wiped everything clean. I found something buried deep in Mercer's old files, he muttered. Maya and Vanessa leaned over his shoulder. A single encrypted document appeared on the screen. It was labeled, The Echelon Directive. Vanessa frowned. That sounds unnecessarily ominous. Marcus clicked the file. It required biometric clearance, a retinal scan, a voice print, a clearance level higher than the president. Maya's heartbeat slowed. Mercer wasn't at the top. Marcus nodded. No. And whatever the Echelon Directive is, it's still running. Maya straightened. Then we shut it down. But Marcus hesitated. There's a problem. He turned to her, his face grim. The only person who had access to these files was Jonathan Drake. Maya froze. Drake. The man she had already put away. The man who had warned her about Mercer. And now? She had to go back to him. The next day, Maya walked through the cold steel halls of Fort Rivers Prison. The same private facility where Drake had once laughed in her face. Now, she was walking straight back to him. A guard led her through a set of reinforced doors into a secure wing. Drake sat at a simple table, wearing the same prison jumpsuit, his silver hair still perfectly combed back. The moment he saw her, he smirked. Agent Carter. Maya sat across from him. We need to talk. Drake leaned forward. Oh, let me guess. His smirk widened. You thought Elias Mercer was the end, but now you've realized there's something bigger. Maya's jaw tightened. What is the Echelon Directive? Drake chuckled. And here I thought you already knew everything. Maya slammed a file onto the table. Talk. Now. Drake lifted an eyebrow. You're getting desperate. Maya leaned closer. You have two options, Drake. Her voice was deadly calm. Either you help me, or I make sure you never see the outside of this prison again. Drake studied her. Then he exhaled. Fine. He folded his hands. The Echelon Directive is a contingency plan. Maya frowned. A contingency for what? Drake's eyes darkened. For when the government loses control. Maya's blood ran cold. Drake continued. It's a failsafe. If too much corruption is exposed, if the wrong people get taken down. His gaze locked onto hers. The system resets itself. Maya's chest tightened. You're saying the government erases itself? Drake nodded. People. Records. Evidence. Everything. His voice dropped lower. And those who know too much? A small smile. They disappear. Maya felt ice in her veins. Who runs it? Drake tilted his head. You already know. Maya's mind flashed back to the message on Mercer's phone. The White House. Her breathing slowed. Because this wasn't just about corruption anymore. The people in charge? They weren't just protecting themselves. They were controlling reality itself. And now? Maya was officially a target. Outside the prison, Vanessa and Marcus were waiting by the SUV. What did he say? Vanessa asked. Maya didn't answer right away. Instead, she pulled out her phone. Opened the anonymous message. We are watching. She typed a response. Then watch closely. Because I'm coming for you next. She hit send. Then, she turned to her team. We're going after the people in the White House. Vanessa's eyes widened. Marcus exhaled. Well, we're officially insane. Maya smirked. Not insane. She climbed into the car. Just ready to win. The night sky over Washington, D.C. was dark. Too dark. Maya Carter sat in the black SUV, staring at the White House in the distance. It was beautiful, almost peaceful. But behind those walls, the real war was happening. Not with bullets. Not with bombs. But with power. Secrets. Control. And tonight, Maya wasn't playing by their rules anymore. Marcus Boyd sat in the back seat, his fingers flying over his keyboard. I've cracked part of the Echelon Directive, he muttered. Maya and Vanessa King leaned in. And? Vanessa asked. Marcus exhaled. It's a full-scale government purge system, he said. Designed to eliminate threats when corruption gets exposed. Maya's jaw tightened. What kind of threats? Marcus looked up, his expression grim. People like you. Maya didn't flinch. She already knew. This wasn't just about shutting her down. It was about erasing her entirely. And the worst part? It had already begun. Marcus turned his screen toward them. A classified document appeared. At the top, echelon threats, immediate action required. Maya's heart stopped when she saw the names. Maya Carter, Vanessa King, Marcus Boyd, David Langston, eliminated. Vanessa's face darkened. We're on a kill list. Marcus swallowed hard. Not just us. He scrolled down. More names. Reporters. Whistleblowers. Judges who refused to play along. Dozens of people. People who would vanish without a trace. Unless Maya stopped it. Now, Maya's eyes burned with determination. How do we shut it down? Marcus pulled up another file. The Echelon Directive is controlled by an AI network housed in an underground facility beneath the Pentagon. Vanessa whistled. So, just a little break-in, huh? Maya smirked. Yeah, just a little one. Marcus looked nervous. You do realize we're about to commit federal treason, right? Maya loaded her gun. Not treason. She met his eyes. Justice. The Pentagon was locked down tight, but Maya, Vanessa, and Marcus moved like ghosts. Using Marcus's hacked credentials, they slipped through security checkpoints, dodging guards and bypassing surveillance feeds. They reached an unmarked elevator. Marcus tapped his tablet. This leads to Echelon's control center. The door slid open. Maya stepped inside. Let's end this. The elevator descended deep underground, the air growing cold. When the doors opened, they stepped into a massive data center. Rows of servers blinked with blue lights, humming with pure power. At the center of it all, a single terminal, and on its screen, Echelon Directive active. Termination sequence in progress. Maya's blood ran cold. Marcus sprinted forward, typing furiously. They've already started wiping people. Vanessa gritted her teeth. Then stop it. Marcus's hands flew over the keyboard. I can shut Echelon down, but there's a catch. Maya and Vanessa stared at him. If I do this, he continued, every system tied to it collapses. That includes entire government networks, military defenses, global intelligence feeds. Vanessa cursed. You mean we're about to crash the entire U.S. security infrastructure? Marcus nodded. Yeah, and there's no undo button. Maya exhaled. She looked at the screen. She looked at the names on the list. If she shut Echelon down, it would cripple the people in power. But it would also create chaos. A power vacuum. New threats. New monsters. For a brief moment, she hesitated. Then, she reached forward and pressed delete. Alarms blared. Red warning lights flashed. Echelon Directive terminated. The servers hummed violently, then shut off one by one. Marcus stepped back, breathing hard. It's done. Vanessa let out a slow breath. So what happens now? Maya looked at the screen. At the ashes of a system built to erase people like her. Now, she turned away. We rebuild. Over the next 24 hours, the effects of the Echelon shutdown rippled through the world. Classified files leaked. Secret bank accounts exposed. Powerful figures suddenly stripped of control. And Elias Mercer? Gone. Disappeared. But Maya knew. Men like him didn't stay gone for long. And the next time he resurfaced, she would be waiting. Over the next 24 hours, the effects of the Echelon shutdown rippled through the world. Classified files leaked. Secret bank accounts exposed. Powerful figures suddenly stripped of control. And Elias Mercer? Gone. Disappeared. But Maya knew. Men like him didn't stay gone for long. And the next time he resurfaced, she would be waiting. Over the next 24 hours, the effects of the Echelon shutdown rippled through the world. Classified files leaked. Secret bank accounts exposed. Powerful figures suddenly stripped of control. And Elias Mercer? Gone. Disappeared. But Maya knew. Men like him didn't stay gone for long. And the next time he resurfaced, she would be waiting. Over the next 24 hours, the effects of the Echelon shutdown rippled through the world. Classified files leaked. Secret bank accounts exposed. Powerful figures suddenly stripped of control. And Elias Mercer? Gone. Disappeared. But Maya knew. Men like him didn't stay gone for long. And the next time he resurfaced, she would be waiting. Over the next 24 hours, the effects of the Echelon shutdown rippled through the world. Classified files leaked. Secret bank accounts exposed. Powerful figures suddenly stripped of control. And Elias Mercer? Gone. Disappeared. But Maya knew. Men like him didn't stay gone for long. And the next time he resurfaced, she would be waiting. Over the next 24 hours, the effects of the Echelon shutdown rippled through the world. Classified files leaked. Secret bank accounts exposed. Powerful figures suddenly stripped of control. And Elias Mercer? Gone. Disappeared. But Maya knew. Men like him didn't stay gone for long. And the next time he resurfaced, she would be waiting. Over the next 24 hours, the effects of the Echelon shutdown rippled through the world. Classified files leaked. Secret bank accounts exposed. Powerful figures suddenly stripped of control. And Elias Mercer? Gone. Disappeared. But Maya knew. Men like him didn't stay gone for long. And the next time he resurfaced, she would be waiting.